So UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Allen just wrapped up, and it was a pretty good card. Overall, I really enjoyed it, but it does turn out that laptop Artem is not a mythical predictor. As you guys know, I'm using my laptop microphone and camera right now, and unfortunately it did not help with my predictions at all. But this video is all about what I think the UFC is going to do in the future, what I think all of the winners will probably fight next, who the winners will fight next, and we'll start with Max Holloway because the answer is not obvious. There's a lot of options. It really depends on what's going to happen at 145 and 155. The obvious answer, I feel, is we just match him up with the winner of Ilia Topuria versus Josh Emmett because he hasn't fought either of the two. Brian Ortega versus Arnold Allen could probably make sense as well. I think that's what we do. You can't just do Ortega versus Holloway because Holloway's already beaten Ortega and he did it quite dominantly and somewhat recently as well. So I think it's what you do. You do Holloway versus the winner of Emmett versus Ilia Topuria. Or what you could do as a bit of a wild card is at 155 pounds, Charles Oliveira recently pulled out of his fight against Beneil Dariush, and Max Holloway has talked about moving up a weight class because he's kind of cleared out 145 at this point from bulk. So you could do Charles Oliveira versus Max Holloway because Charles Oliveira has lost to Max Holloway in the past. They've both kind of agreed somewhat that they would be interested in fighting each other again. Maybe you could do it now, because the rumor is Dustin Poirier is going to fill in for Charles Oliveira. They must be paying Dustin Poirier a lot of money to fight Beneil Dariush on short notice, but that's apparently what the rumor is. That's what Ariel Helwani said is in the discussions right now, so Charles Oliveira is not going to have an opponent. You know, maybe you've got to do Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan next or something crazy like that, but I think that's what you could do as well. Holloway versus the winner of Emmett Topuria, because he's never fought them before at 145, or Holloway versus Charles Oliveira. He did say that he wants to fight the Korean Zombie in Australia, which is random, but I feel like the UFC is probably going to try and set up the Korean Zombie with a retirement fight in South Korea, and also against a very winnable opponent, so I don't think they'll do TKZ versus Holloway, which would be fun, but I just don't think anyone really wants to see it. Edson Barboza knocked out Billy Quarantillo. I was picking Edson Barboza the whole week, and then I finally switched my pick to Billy Q when it comes to making my predictions, and Barboza made me look a little bit silly, you know. Barboza never really let Quarantillo get started, and he just KO'd him. He timed a knee absolutely perfectly, knocked out Billy Q. Very good performance from Edson Barboza. Adds to his very long highlight reel, and I think a fight with Alex Caceres would make sense. I mean, Edson Barboza's 37 years old. You probably don't want to give him super up-and-coming prospects. You probably don't want to shoot him up the rankings too much either. I feel like maybe against Alex Caceres would be a good fight because I think that Edson Barboza's been losing a couple of fights recently. He just beat Billy Q. Let's give him another ranked opponent. Alex Caceres is ranked right now, and Alex Caceres has been in the UFC a long time as well, so they're both veterans. It would be kind of like a veteran versus veteran matchup. I think Edson Barboza would probably win it, but Alex Caceres has a funky style as well. I think it would be a really fun fight, and I genuinely think that is a pretty good option for what could be next. So Alex Caceres versus Edson Barboza is what I've got coming up. Azamat Murzakanov beat Dustin Jacoby very impressively because this was a complete nightmare matchup for Azamat Murzakanov in paper. But Murzakanov, man, I believe it was every time he threw a left hand, or maybe it was a right hand, it doesn't matter. Every time he threw a left hand, he landed on Dustin Jacoby. He dropped Dustin Jacoby multiple times. Dustin Jacoby went for the finish in the third, and then with a minute to go, he went for a takedown, and he just burnt the last minute. He just showed no willingness to win, to come back. It was very odd, but Murzakanov won. He's an older guy, he's 35 years old, I think, at 205 pounds. Let's not really waste too much time with this guy. If he wants to be at the top of the division, he's going to have to kind of hustle now because he's going to be leaving his prime. And I think a guy that's in the top 10, because he did call for a top 10 opponent, that would take the fight, that would make it a fun fight, which would still be a difficult matchup for Azamat, would be Ryan Spann. I mean, Ryan Spann, he did just lose to Nikita Krylov. I don't think he took too much damage in that fight because there was a lot of grappling. He did just KO Dominic Reyes as well. I believe he's sitting at the number 10 spot exactly. I think Ryan Spann versus Azamat Murzakanov, I mean, you could probably put that on a pay-per-view. You could probably co-main a fight night with it as well. I don't think Murzakanov has a big enough name yet to headline a fight night, but I think Azamat Murzakanov versus Ryan Spann does make a pretty decent amount of sense. Ion Cutelaba just beat Tanner Boser. It was pretty sad for Tanner Boser, honestly, moving down to 205 pounds and then in his 205-pound debut on the UFC. He gets KO'd in the first round by Ian Cutelaba on the list as well. I picked Tanner Boser in that matchup. I thought Ian Cutelaba was either going to win in the first round or gas out trying, and he ended up winning in the first round. So Ion Cutelaba, I believe he's got a losing record in the UFC. I think it's like 6-9 at the moment or something like that. So you can't give him a ranked opponent. I know he's been ranked in the past, but I feel like maybe Felipe Lins would be an appropriate opponent for him right now. Felipe Lins is an older guy. He's 37 years old. You probably don't want to give Felipe Lins any prospects that you're just going to kill off. He just knocked out Ovince St. Preux very quickly and somewhat easily, took no damage. I don't think that Ian Cutelaba took too much damage either, so Cutelaba versus Lins could probably be made in July, August or so, give them a little bit of time to prepare for the matchup. Maybe Lins will be wanting to return earlier than that, but it's still 3-4 months away, so it's still pretty soon. Pedro Munoz made us all look silly, or maybe it was more Chris Gutierrez making us all look silly. I mean, I was really not confident in Chris Gutierrez, and it was for good reason in hindsight, really. I probably should have picked Munoz, but I just kind of liked Gutierrez's momentum, and Gutierrez, I feel like it's almost as if when he got dropped in the first round, he just quit. Like, in the second round, when he had an opportunity to go, he didn't go in the third round at all, and Pedro Munoz ended up winning the decision. And I'm sorry, Pedro Munoz, but I'm going to give you two options. You got to fight another up-and-coming dude. There's not really too many options there. He's fought Dominic Cruz in the past, who hasn't got an opponent, but my opponent for him is Jonathan Martinez, who's going to have to fight down the rankings again, but if you do look to the rankings, there's not really too much options, because I know that Pedro Munoz is ranked number 9, but the winner of Song Yadong versus Ricky Simone might fight Pedro Munoz. You could give him the winner of that fight. That does make sense. You could give him Umar Nurmagomedov, who's desperately trying to find an opponent. Or you could do what I'm doing and just give him an up-and-coming guy like Jonathan Martinez. We'll find out how good Jonathan Martinez really is. But Pedro Munoz versus the winner of Simone and Song Yadong really does make sense as well. But I kind of like this matchup. I think it makes sense. We're going to find out how good Jonathan Martinez is really, because I thought he lost his last fight even though he got the decision. Now, Rafa Garcia just beat Clay Guida. I believe it was 30-27 times 3 or something like that. It was a pretty good performance from him. He's from Mexico. UFC's rumored to have an event on in Mexico in September. I've got a really bad feeling that that's not going to be a pay-per-view card, because I think that Grasso and Shevchenko will probably end up fighting before then. And Volk is fighting Yair in July. So, like, who really knows? And then also, Moreno is also fighting in July. So, who really knows if Mexico's going to have any champions by the time that date rolls around? So, Rafa Garcia, you could do this fight in Mexico, or you could do this fight in the opponent's home country, which is Fareed Siam. There's rumors going around that UFC is going to be putting on an event in September, because Abduragimov has been signed to the UFC, and then the rumor is that he is going to be making his debut in France in September. So Fareed Siam is from France. He probably wants to come back a lot sooner, though, Fareed Siam, but the thing is, he's 26 years old, so he really can afford to take the time off. He seems to have made rapid improvements since he last fought. Terence McKinney come back against Mikhail Figlak, looked really good in that fight. He probably wants to come back sooner than that, but you know, it's 5 months away now. I feel like Fareed Siam probably is looking for an opponent for August, July, but if they're going to be coming to France in September, Fareed Siam should be on that card. Rafa Garcia, it kind of makes sense timing-wise. It makes sense rankings-wise as well, because if you do look at the unranked area of the rankings, for some reason, Fareed Siam is ranked very highly. He's actually ranked higher than Rafa Garcia, so I think that makes sense. Rafa Garcia versus Fareed Siam, you could do it in Mexico. You could also do it in France. Bill Algeo beat TJ Brown, submitted him in the second round, looked really good in that matchup, kind of made TJ Brown not look that good himself. I was on Bill Algeo, but the guys that we want picks were super confident in TJ Brown, so they kind of put a bit of doubt in my mind that Bill Algeo got it done. I'm happy for Bill Algeo, and there's once again rumour of a card taking place in Australia later this year. Bill Algeo could fight Joshua Calabao on that fight night, or pay-per-view, whatever they want to do. That makes sense. That really is an event that makes sense. Max Holloway kind of leaked the plans for Australia and UFC Australia again in 2023. So Calabao probably wants to fight on that card. He's from Australia. Him versus Algeo makes sense. The winner of that fight would be much closer to the top 15 than they are right now, because they're both actually kind of borderline top 25, I believe, right now. Bellator was coming off a loss. If he beats someone like Josh Cullerbell, who's on a 5-fight win streak, he really would be up there with some of the better guys at 145. I think that makes sense. Brandon Royval beat Matheus Nicolau on the prelims of a title eliminator, and it has been somewhat confirmed that that fight was a title eliminator because Brandon Royval has actually been asked to be the backup for UFC 290. So Brandon Royval is going to weigh in as the backup for UFC 290 for Alejandro Pantoja versus Brandon Moreno. And what happens is, about 99% of the time, when an opponent weighs in as the backup and they make weight, they get the next title shot. It's happened with Colby Covington in the past. It's happened with other opponents in the past. It would have happened to Anthony Smith if he didn't make weight. So I think that Brandon Royval is going to fight the winner of that fight. And I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, I think he's actually fought both of those guys before, Pantoja and Moreno. So I think that he's going to fight the winner of that fight. And I'm going to reveal my early prediction for the matchup. I do believe that Alejandro Pantoja will beat Brandon Moreno for the second time in professional MMA and for the third time in MMA in general. I think Pantoja takes the belt off Brandon Moreno, and he's going to fight what will be the number one contender in Brandon Royval. If you're not going to give him the title shot, but it sounds like the UFC is going to, Royval could probably rematch Kai Kara-France or fight Amir Albazi, the winner of that fight, because I feel like the winner of that fight, even if it is Amir Albazi, will still be one fight away from a title shot, but I think that makes sense. Zach Cummings and Hen Herman both retired, so we can move on from there. Jillian Robertson beat Piera Rodriguez. Piera Rodriguez was sitting just outside the rankings in the top 15. I've given her an opponent that I don't think is ranked, but I think if she is, she'll be at the bottom of top 15. And this makes sense for a very specific card. I know UFC 289 taking place in Canada needs all the help it can get on the main card, but this is a fight you could do on the prelims. You could do Jillian Robertson versus Lupita Godinez on the prelims of UFC 289, because Lupita Godinez, she may be from Mexico or born in Mexico, but she does actually fight out of Canada, and Jillian Robertson is Canadian, so you definitely could put this matchup on the prelims of UFC 289 in Canada. I think it makes sense. I know the card needs more main card fights, but it's a prelim that I think could make sense. Daniel Zellhuber just fought Lando Venata. Daniel Zellhuber, in my opinion, I don't think he took too much damage himself. Lando Venata, on the other hand, did. Lando Venata took a lot of damage in that fight. I don't know how quickly Daniel Zellhuber will want to make a comeback, but if he wants to come back somewhat soon, he could fight in July, because there is going to be an event on in London. It sounds like it's going to be a fight night, and I think what's going to happen is maybe Tom Aspinall's return versus Marcin Tybura or someone like that will headline the card, or you could maybe have Arnold Allen headline the card if he wanted to make a quick turnaround against Brian Ortega. So Daniel Zellhuber could fight Chris Duncan, who's from Scotland, on that July card. It's at the end of July. It's about 3 months away, so I don't know if either guy will wanting to make a quick turnaround. It'll be a much faster turnaround for Zellhuber than it is for Chris Duncan, but I think that's a fun fight. You know, Chris Duncan won his debut against Omar Morales in a close fight. He didn't look too impressive, and Daniel Zellhuber just won his first UFC fight after completely looking terrible in his debut. So I think Daniel Zellhuber versus Chris Duncan is a pretty appropriate matchup for both guys. We move down to Denise Gomes versus Bruno Brazil. Denise Gomes was the We Want Picks lock of the night. Congratulations, Jacob, on that one. Made me look silly. Bruno Brazil is a future fade. She has no striking defense. She just puts her arms out and her chin up, and that's her striking defense. Every time Denise Gomes threw an overhand, it landed, and about 50% of the time it landed, she dropped Bruno Brazil. It was absolutely insane. I like Denise Gomes. I think that Denise Gomes is probably a girl that they're going to want to have around because she fought Loma Lookboonmee on short notice. She's also super young as well, so let's give her a very winnable matchup in her next one. Let's give her a Melissa Martinez. If you do look at women's strawweight, I believe Elise Reed is booked. I was even looking at Vanessa Demopoulos. She was booked as well. I mean, Melissa Martinez is 0-1 in the UFC, but Denise Gomes is 1-1 in the UFC, so kind of why not make this fight? Melissa Martinez didn't look that good against Elise Reed. Apparently, she's a former world kickboxing champion. She didn't really look like one against Elise Reed. I think this is such a winnable fight for Denise Gomes, but there really isn't a lot of option unless you do want to give her a big step up in competition, but you do have to consider the fact that Denise Gomes is 1-1. in the UFC. So good for Denise Gomez, good win. I think her versus Melissa Martinez could be fun. Maybe you could even do it in Mexico later on in the year. But Denise Gomez is the kind of fighter that wants to fight often. So it'll be interesting to see who they match her up with next. Gaston Bolaños beat Aaron Phillips in a fight which a lot of people actually think Aaron Phillips won. I thought Gaston Bolaños won it pretty clearly, honestly, but it is what it is. Gaston Bolaños made his UFC debut, had his whole career in Bellator. It wasn't really the best look for Bellator, but even then Gaston Bolaños was not fighting the best guys whatsoever. Gaston Bolaños, he's a pure striker, pretty much. He doesn't really have wrestling. He doesn't really have grappling. He's a marketable guy. He's from Peru, and UFC has recently signed a lot of guys from Peru, so maybe they're looking at to go into Peru in like 2024 or something. I don't know, but I like Gaston Bolaños. I feel like UFC are going to be smart in their matchmaking with him because they're going to want Gaston Bolaños to win. And I think he should fight Chad Anhaliga. Chad Anhaliga, is from Canada. Once again, that card needs all the help it can get on the main card. But Chad Anhaliga, being from Canada, put that fight on the prelims of UFC 289 in Canada. Gaston Bolaños, I think, could have a very good chance of knocking out Chad Anhaliga. Other than that, I don't think Alatine Haley actually has a matchup as well, because Alatine Haley was actually another fighter that comes to my mind, because he's pretty much a pure striker. He does wrestle and grapple every now and then, but actually I don't think he is a pure striker. I think I'm getting confused with Archie Lung. I am. Anyway, you could do Chan Anhaliga, or you could do Alatine Haley. Archie Lung has a fight booked, so you can't really do that. But when you match up Gaston Bolaños, the UFC is going to want to be smart. They're not going to want to give him wrestlers, they're not going to want to give him grapplers. They're going to want to capitalize on Gaston Bolaños' name, because if you don't know, he's been on Joe Rogan twice for some reason, and he gets highlight KOs. He didn't get a KO in this fight. I think him versus Anhaliga is a fight that would make sense. Now we move on. Jocelyn Edwards. She beat Lucy Pudilova. It was a weird decision. I can kind of see where they're coming from, but at the same time, I don't even know. It was a weird decision, it was. Jocelyn Edwards also missed weight, so you can't really reward Jocelyn Edwards, but if you do look at women's 135, they've literally got 20 fighters on the roster. It's insane. Women's 135 in UFC is 20 fighters on the roster. It's crazy. So there's not really any option like whatsoever. So I just kind of went with Chelsea Chandler. But honestly, like, who knows? Women's 135 does not have that many fighters. You could do her versus Tamiris Vidal as well. There's just not really any option at all. Chelsea Chandler said if she wants to make 135, she would have to have a bit of notice. So maybe just Chelsea Chandler versus maybe Jocelyn Edwards in like August, September. Jocelyn Edwards is the kind of fighter that does want to fight often, though, so it'll be interesting to see what she does, who she fights next, but she did miss weight. Not a good look for Jocelyn Edwards. Not a good look for the UFC either, because that woman's 145-pound division, I think, is on its way out. So, be interesting to see what they do in the future, but let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. I don't know what I'm going to do in my next video. Probably Bellator predictions. I think Bellator's on this weekend, so probably spend all morning tomorrow looking into that. So, I'll see you in the next one, and yeah, thanks for watching.